today. So welcome to Talk Apprenticeships, my newsletter. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to find out how non-ministerial life is for the first question.
So, well, first of all, thank you, Tom. It's a pleasure to meet you and learn all about you and your newsletter. And anyone who's promoting apprenticeships to me is a good thing. So thank you for asking me to be on. I decided to step down as MP because I'd done 25 years, 10 years as a candidate in Harlow, 14 years as MP, and and because I thought the election would be early, and there are all these kind of rules of what ministers can do for a while after leaving office. For example, we're not allowed to work for 3 months after leaving office. I actually thought the election was going to be in May, not in July. So I stepped down, which I was very sad to do, because it was the only job that I wanted in government, and it was an incredible job. And you were able to make policy and change the world. And so it was sad, but it's just one of those things I had to do. What I'm hoping to do, again, you have to get approval from this government committee called a COBRA's work for a number of different organizations, all connected with education, skills and apprenticeships. So I'm just waiting for the sign off from the government committee to agree those things. I've accepted a few, and but ultimately I hope to I'm really pleased to be working with these organizations. I hope to do one big job before I stop, before I retire, but all to do with skills and education and apprenticeships.
Yeah, I hope after 25 years you're actually at least using this 3 months to relax a little bit.
Well, as yet, I don't want to get the violins out here, but as yet, it's been very difficult because I had to help my successor candidate in the general election, who used to work in my office, is absolutely brilliant. Ironically, not ironically, actually, wonderfully, I should say, the person running her campaign, her name was Hannah Ellis, she used to work in my office. The person running her campaign, the youngest ever leader of any council in political history. He's about 23 years old, Harlow Council. The reason why I mention him is that he used to be a full-time parliamentary apprentice in my office. And I was the first MP to ever do such a thing, to employ full-time parliamentary apprentices. And I've had about 6 over the years that I was MP. It's something I'm very proud of.
And actually that skips forward, because the question I wanted to ask is, how was that process? We talk about employers. You are an employer in this respect. How was that, taking on an apprentice and managing that process?
Well, my first ever speech was about apprentices and in schools. I wanted more schools to encourage kids to teach apprenticeships, not just tell kids to go to university, although of course going to university is a wonderful thing, but people have got to have a fair choice and understand that apprenticeships are incredible too. But I knew that this was going to be the major issue when I first got elected in 2010. And I was going to champion apprenticeships and skills. But then I thought, I can't just talk about it. I should actually, if I love them so much, I've got to do it. Yeah. So I employed an apprentice. I had to seek outside support because you only get a limited staffing budget when you're an MP. So I had to seek some outside support to help pay, because I wanted to give them properly the living wage, not just the apprentice minimum wage. Yeah. And I was lucky to have most of them trained at Harlow College, one of the best colleges in the country. And when it first happened, there was a big announcement with the then apprentice minister, John Hayes, and it had never been done before. And now in the House of Commons, the Speaker has started an apprentice scheme, and the House of Commons Civil Service now employ apprentices, which never happened before. I'd like more MPs to employ apprentices, but nevertheless, there's been a sea change from when I first started.
And I think this is where I do what I do as a hobby, is that it's about raising that awareness. You've done that very much in the heart of Parliament. You've said, right, I'm going to do it. You've proven it works, and the Speaker's gone, okay, no, that's actually a really good idea. And that's how we do it, is by evidencing it and kind of standing up to be counted.
Exactly. And the Speaker's very supportive of apprenticeships. And in fact, my last speech in the House of Commons, I started talking about apprenticeships. I wanted it to be, it wasn't the only thing I talked about, but it was. And I said, please boost the Speaker's apprenticeship scheme. And I had to go to an event for ex-MPs, a reception in the House of Commons. I was really pleased that the Speaker's team who work with him, they told me that that he was taking this very seriously. So, you know, I have nothing but admiration for the current Speaker of the House of Commons and for his commitment to apprenticeships.
Absolutely. You mentioned there about your first ever speech in the House of Commons. I think one of your main goals in that speech was to encourage schools to advertise not just university, but all kind of levels of skills, including apprenticeships. I suppose the deep question at the end of those 14 years, do you consider yourself to have been successful in that?
Partially. So there has been a sea change. So, for example, I pushed through the legislation with Lord Baker. It's called the Lord Baker Clause because he first tabled the amendments in the House of Lords to get more encounters with students and with apprenticeship organisations, with FE colleges, with technical colleges. And there has been a sea change. There is an organisation called the Apprenticeship Skills and Knowledge Network, funded by government, that goes around schools all over the country, particularly in disadvantaged areas, promoting apprenticeships and skills. And I've been I remember as a minister, I went to one in the Oasis Academy just outside Bristol and saw an apprenticeship fair. In my own area, schools have apprenticeship fairs. Now, that would never have happened in the past.
No.
Never. And we now have teaching assistant apprenticeships. There's going to be teaching degree apprenticeships coming through, and so the culture will change, because obviously all teachers have been to university, so they weren't aware of the culture of apprenticeships. But if you have more people who are doing teaching degree apprenticeships, that change. So, and also the levy with big companies has really changed, because you now have companies going in promoting apprenticeships with young people into schools, working with the Careers Enterprise Company.
Yeah.
So I think there has been a huge change, but if I'm honest with you, I would say there's a long way to go still.
Yeah.
I still meet apprentices who have even done degree apprenticeships with amazing companies who've offered to go back to their own school, and the schools have said no.
Wow.
Which is very depressing. And this is partly because schools are measured on how many kids they send to the Russell group, which is a self-selecting group of universities who regard themselves as the elite. And there are many wonderful universities in that organization, but I would question that, because there are also wonderful vocational universities. There are wonderful institutes of technology. And so I would, if I could have done one thing, it would have been to stop that measure. I think that would make a big difference as well.
I do feel like we're on a cusp of something. I think we're almost there in terms of changing mindsets. There's still lots to do, as you said. I am personally excited for the teaching degree apprenticeship. I think that's got a lot of legs if it's done right. It's just that I meet a lot of schools, having formerly been a governor for a school, that it's a big problem in staffing, and this could really help. So I wrote about that in an article a few weeks ago. For me, in terms of what you've done and looking back at your history, one of my favorite things, and I don't know how much of an input, I'm sure it was quite significant, was the inception of the Careers and Enterprise Company.
Yes, so that was actually created by Nicky Morgan. And fun enough, when I was chairman of the Education Select Committee, I was initially quite critical of the way that organization was working, but there's been a massive change. And the new chief executive, Ollie de Boston, has been brilliant. And when I was a minister, I had really brilliant meetings and constructive meetings with him, and they've transformed it to make it much more skills and apprenticeship focus. And if you go on their website now, in fact, one of the last things I did as a minister, I knew that I was going, and I had a meeting with him, and I said, come off it, you guys, put some more skill stuff on your website. But much more important than that, so I'm very pleased with what they're doing. Much more important than that, which is revolutionary, is UCAS for apprenticeships now.
Yes, yeah.
When I got in November, when was I appointed? So this time around, the second time around as minister, it was October or November 2022. I had an early meeting with the then head of UCAS, Claire Marchant, who was brilliant. She's now gone to run a university. And I said, why on earth can't we have UCAS for apprenticeships? And and we worked with officials and UCAS. We now have UCAS for apprenticeships. It goes back to your other question about careers. That's going to be, that is amazing, because the problem in the past was when people, all the teachers had was UCAS for university. Now when you go on it, when they're working on it with the students, it's got UCAS for apprenticeships on there.
Yeah.
That is very exciting. I actually said to them, I also want them, at the moment it's University College Admission Service. It should be University College, stand for University Colleges, Apprenticeships and Skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I didn't quite get them to change that, but I kept saying it in speeches and stuff, and had I been there a bit longer. But nevertheless, so there were really positive things that have happened. I would say the glass is half full rather than half empty.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, locally to us, going back to the careers hubs that the CEC have put together, they are doing a lot of the hard work in terms of getting those apprenticeship fairs up and running, and having that awareness of each and individual pathway that's available to students. But certainly the UCAS for apprenticeships, when I saw that come out, I was excited. I should have more things to be excited about, but that definitely is going to be fantastic for the industry and moving forwards. I know they're planning lots of new changes, so really looking forward to that. Kind of moving on a little bit, one of the things that I don't know how long ago it was, you did a piece with Ed Vaizey on Times Radio.
Yes, only last week.
Oh, recently.
Oh,
Okay,
maybe it was this week. Such a whirlwind.
Things move fast, don't they?
Yeah, it may have been on Monday, but I anyway, carry on. Yeah.
It was really interesting, I thought, and I think you were talking a little bit about Skills England, but one of the things that I wanted to focus on was the potential dilution of the levy, because like you, I'm a big believer, and I think there's lots that can be done with that. But yeah, what do you think? You mentioned tax credits in your talk with Grace. Is that something you think?
Yeah, so no So I'm wary of diluting the levy, because if you dilute the apprenticeship levy, I want to build an apprenticeship nation, right? I want to continue the apprenticeship revolution. And if you say to a company, okay, you can use 50% of your levy on skills programs, well, they're going to do it. And those skills programs will be short. That means they'll employ less apprentices. It also means that if they use up their levy because they're doing these skills programs, you actually have less money to fund small businesses to have apprentices, because what people don't understand is it's not a bad thing if big companies don't use their levy.
Yeah.
Not a bad thing at all, because if big companies don't use their levy, what it means is we can then fully fund the training costs for a small business to hire an apprentice. That's where the money comes from. So unless the Treasury are going to give the government loads more money, which I can't see under the present climate, and I'm not talking about Labour, this would happen under any government.
Yeah.
I think I worry about dilution of the levy. If they dilute it in a way that you offer somebody a traineeship in order to get onto an apprenticeship or something like that, or for maths and English, I have less of a problem. But if it's just so you can sort of use up your levy to do a hodgepodge of skills programs, I would worry about that. And don't forget, there are many skills programs anywhere. There's boot camps, there's free level 3 courses, there is the higher technical qualifications and T levels and all this. And then on terms of this, what I would love to have done had I been in government is a skills tax credit. And that would be a Treasury decision. I could campaign for it, but rather than dilute the levy, I would just say to companies, if you have people on proper quality skills programs, you would get a tax credit, just as way companies get R&D credits if they do research and development. That's how I would do it.
And that's what I thought was really interesting. It was actually a really great step in the right direction to increase the levy transfer threshold for large businesses up to 45%, I think it was, from 25. And I think that was the right answer. I think this is a step, possibly from my perspective, in the wrong direction, but we'll see how it goes.
Let's wait and see what they do. It may be a small dilution, and I don't have a problem with Skills England, as long as it's led by a really charismatic figure who can bring people together, and it doesn't just become a quango. So and it will absolutely, I always believe in the power of individuals to change history, and it will depend on the individual who's running it. So if they have someone really brilliant who is charismatic, who understands the area, who can bring together unions and business people and the FE sector and so on, and convene them together and then drive forward a skills program, that could be potentially exciting. But if it's just some kind of person they just plucks out from nowhere who then I think, you know, it will just be seen as another skills body, but it won't necessarily change that, you know, bring about that skills and apprenticeship revolution that we talk about.
I love the term apprenticeship revolution. I've been going on about that just like you as well. I think one of the ideas that, I mean, it's not necessarily something that might not have been done already, but you see a lot in construction when they do construction contracts and bids and tenders. You have to include a certain amount of apprenticeships within your bid to win that tender. I don't see why that couldn't be wider across business as a landscape to ensure that apprenticeships are part of every single contract.
Well, I tried also campaigning on that for many years. I wasn't successful, although we do there is a social value that companies have to show social value, but there is so many differences on what social value means. So I would absolutely say to a company, any company that wants a contract with government, if you want the contract, you need to have 5% of your employees as apprentices.
Yeah.
And 100%.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, so moving on from that now, one of the things that I've kind of highlighted recently is something that I think could be improved is the find a training provider system that we have on the current government website. Having worked for a college, I've certainly seen that it's not necessarily anyone's trying to be untrue. It's that data is just left and someone who doesn't man it, because providers generally have lots of people doing lots of jobs. And the kind of thought around block release, when you don't actually offer block release, it's just to try and get those leads from a national kind of background. Is there you know, what are your thoughts, I suppose, on that service and the service to employers from providers?
I mean, I think there are it might be able to be improved, but I don't think there is a problem in employers finding providers. You've got your local FE colleges. There are so many providers all over the country. There's many good ones. You can contact the AALP, who, you know, are the leading body for independent providers. So I don't think there is. It may be that you could make it more user friendly, and so somebody could type in, but I've never known that to be a problem in terms of businesses finding the providers. If you really want to do it and you understand it, it's pretty easy to do, because you can join the ALP, contact the ALP. You can, if you've got an FE college, the chances are they'll be doing apprenticeships. So and then you can look at their pretty much whether they're good or outstanding or not, their Ofsted ratings and so on, and make that decision. So I mean, the one thing what I would like to do is see more of is, if you're a small business, the providers running everything for you, because the big businesses have got legions of HR departments and goodness knows what. But if you're a small business making a decision about just to take on 2 or 3 apprentices, or even one, if there's a lot of bureaucracy, you're not going to do it.
I suppose that's probably where I was getting at. It's having worked with employers to recruit apprentices. We often did the recruiting. We didn't do the interviews, but we did the, you know, help them with their DAS account and so on and so forth, because it's incredibly difficult. And that was the biggest hurdle for the small businesses to get into apprenticeships. So yeah, I suppose, like you mentioned, you can use the AELP and you can look at Ofsted ratings, but Bill's Carpentry might struggle knowing about all of that. So that was I think where we can do a lot of improving, because SMEs make up 95% of the businesses.
Yeah, so maybe we just need to make sure that if Bill's Carpentry says thinks I want an apprentice, they would be able to type in something which says, what's the best apprentice provider in your area that does carpentry, and they could very easily find that up. Then they ring them up, and it might be the FE college, it might be an independent provider, and then that person says, don't worry, Bill, I'll do everything for you. We'll do the forms for you with the government. We'll send you a whole load of apprentices to deal with, and so on and so forth. When I did it for my office, I did it with Harlow College. They helped us with the forms. We interviewed the apprentices jointly with Harlow College and myself, and also there was sometimes there was a local business supporting that apprentice, because I had to raise extra funds to pay for it, and so they came in on the interview, so they were involved all step of the way. And so that's, if you could do that, But I think there is, under Skills for Life and the new, which I initiated as a minister, I think, I'm not saying it can't be improved, by the way, I completely get it, but I think there is a lot of that now on there.
Yeah. And the thing I always say to SMEs and small businesses is actually the hurdles that they see that are this high are generally not. They're probably about this high, but it's our anticipation in our head when you've got your contracts to go out and do. You've got work on and all these different things. As a small business owner, you don't have a HR manager. They are generally quite low because of all these support organisations that we have. So yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And it'd be looking forward to seeing what's out there and what's coming up in the next kind of few months.
Yeah.
I'll finish up, Rob, because I know you've got to kind of move on at some point. With just one last question. It's kind of a reflective question. I do quite like reflection. In the last 14 years as the kind of former minister for apprenticeships and higher education skills, was there anything that you weren't able to achieve that you hope the new government will?
Yeah, so I think that we changed, on the plus side, we changed the culture about apprenticeships and skills. This conversation would never have happened 10 years ago, and you wouldn't be sending out a newsletter about apprenticeships. When I got in 2010, apprenticeships were mainly seen about the traditional crafts as well as construction and engineering and so on. In fact, you just mentioned carpentry, for example. So that's where those are all really important apprenticeships, don't get me wrong, absolutely. But nowadays you can do an apprenticeship in 690 different professions, right? From aeronautical to zoology, with carpentry, with health, with media, with sort of legal, with media, with nursing, with policing, or in between, right? And that has been a revolution. That's what I mean by the revolution. And the apprenticeships now, whereas in the old days, sometimes people were just doing apprenticeships, so-called apprenticeships, for a few months. Now it's a minimum of a year. You've got high quality standards designed by employers, which are really hard. Doesn't mean they can't be improved. And you have, because of the levy, big companies now have apprentice people on their boards, on their board level, in charge of the apprenticeship program. And with great sounding titles like Chief Knowledge Officer. I mean, I'd be quite happy to have a title like that one day. And so there has been a revolution in the way that, and the change in the schools, but the culture still. So I think it's a half glass full, but the culture still is about university. So I think that needs to change. And again, I wasn't able to change the Russell Group thing, which I mentioned earlier. The schools, I would like to have had a skills tax credit to have brought it through. But we did bring Skills for Life through, which I think is great, and UCAS for FE. And what I'd like to see, I brought through a apprentice scheme for disabled apprentices. Sorry, a mentoring scheme for disabled apprentices. That was just a pilot, and I'd like to see a lot more work done about how we can get more disadvantaged people to do apprenticeships. That's I wasn't able to do. I did some of it. We had increase the care leavers bursary from 1,000 to 3,000 and other things, and degree apprenticeships. I'd like to see 50% of students doing degree apprenticeships, for example. But I'd like, if you do change the levy, I would be perfectly happy if you fine-tuned it to say, for example, if you can use more of your levy if you have disadvantaged students come in, disadvantaged backgrounds, or students with special educational needs, and to make sure that the pilot scheme we've got for disabled apprentices, that we roll that out to everyone. I mean, I have some most incredible apprentices who have difficulties or disabilities over my time, and I go away feeling, I mean, I have a walking disability myself, and I go away looking at these people thinking, my God, they are the most incredible superhumans. And I want that to be available to, a lot more people. So I wasn't able to do more on that, that side of things. But I think we're going in the direction of the travel. And I think I'm very comforted by the appointment of Jackie Smith.
Yeah.
Met her. I think she's a big hitter. And so to me, all I care about is putting party politics aside. All I care about, this is the thing that motivates me in my life. I can't completely explain it, but it really does. And if the fact that the new government have put a really big hitter in there, and that the Prime Minister, one of his early speeches was about skills, you can have a debate about the issues, whether you think it's good or whatever. But the fact that he's done it, I think that's really, really encouraging, really
Yeah.
encouraging. And so I think the direction of travel is going to still be a good one, even if I may have differing views about what they want to do, the new government. I think the direction of travel is exciting. I think we changed the course of history. But yeah, so that's where I am. So it's a mixture of plus and good. As I say, keep saying the heart glass is half full rather than half empty.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think we're quite familiar in that sense that I just want to talk about it. And it was for me an absolute breath of fresh air when the government were talking about apprenticeships in their electoral debates.
Yeah.
I haven't gone back in history, but I don't imagine that's happened before as a topic. And I think that reflects, such positive and fantastic stuff you've done over the last 14 years. So I'm really grateful to have had your time. And I think it's just great to see where you go next. And hopefully we're going to go in the right direction. I'm sure we are. But as you said, as long as we're talking about it, we're going to make some impacts. But what I'll do, Rob, is really, really grateful for your time. I'll let you get off. I'm sure you're very, very busy today. But thank you so much for your time.
Well, I better get a free copy of your newsletter now I've done this.
It'll be in your inbox on Monday, and I think
I will look forward to it. Just comes to the LinkedIn inbox, does it?
It does, yes. So it should be a notification.
Right, well, I hope I'm now subscribed to it on a regular basis. I will read it religiously, I promise. So
that was a great promotion for my newsletter right at the end of this.
Yeah, you can use that quote with pleasure. I look forward. Thank you very much, you guys. Really, really nice to meet you.
Really lovely to meet you, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
take care. Thank you.